Right now, somewhere in the world, an architect is studying blueprints, calculating load-bearing walls, mapping a foundation. This is the universal logic of construction, bottom to top, foundation first. But 1,200 years ago, on a basalt hillside in Maharashtra, someone decided to build in reverse, starting at the top and carving downward into solid volcanic rock. The temple at Allora is not a building. It is an excavation, a single monolithic structure carved from one continuous mass of basalt. An estimated 200,000 tons of rock were removed, creating a temple 276 feet long, 154 feet wide, and 107 feet high. 3 stories of halls, staircases, galleries, and shrines adorned with intricate friezes of elephants, lions, and deities, all cut from the same unbroken stone. And that raises an uncomfortable question. How did 8th century builders execute a top-down excavation of this scale without a single catastrophic error? The Archaeological Survey of India attributes the temple to King Krishna I of the Rashtrakuta dynasty, who reigned from approximately 756 to 773 AD. This is not speculation. A copper plate grant discovered in Vadodara, dated to around 812 AD during the reign of Karka II, explicitly names Krishna Raja as the patron of Kailasa at Ellora, the ancient name for Allora. The inscription records in its own words that the king constructed a temple so wondrous that even the celestial beings moving in the sky were struck by its magnificence, and even the architect who built it was astonished that he could accomplish it. A second inscription, an old Kannada text discovered at Kadaga in present-day Karnataka, similarly credits Krishna Raja with the temple's construction. And the only surviving inscription physically carved into the Ellora Caves themselves belongs to Damta Durga, Krishna's predecessor, dated to around 753 AD on the back wall of Cave 15. This places Rashtrakuta activity at Allora firmly in the mid-8th century. What about the method? Archaeologist M.K. Ekar calculated that a single laborer using 8th century iron tools could cut roughly 4 cubic feet of basalt per day. At that rate, a workforce of 250 people could have completed the entire excavation in approximately 5.5 years, a timeline that fits comfortably within a single monarch's reign. The architectural blueprint was not invented from nothing. The Kailasa Temple is strikingly similar to the Virupaksha Temple at Pattadakal, built by the Chalukya dynasty after they defeated the Pallavas and brought their master architects north. When Krishna I then defeated the Chalukyas, scholars believe he inherited those same builders and their existing design. The Kailasa Temple was the apex of a lineage, the culmination of centuries of rock-cut tradition stretching back to the Buddhist caves at nearby Ajanta, not an isolated miracle. Yet the mystery deepens when you examine the precision. A top-down excavation means every cut is irreversible. Carve too deep in one section and the floor below collapses. Misalign a pillar and the weight distribution shifts catastrophically. The builders had to hold a complete 3-dimensional model of the finished temple in their minds before the first hammer struck stone. They also integrated drainage channels to channel monsoon rainwater and light alignments that illuminate specific chambers, features that had to be planned before the rock was removed, because in a top-down excavation, you cannot add a drainage channel later. The Deccan basalt itself worked in their favor. When freshly exposed, this volcanic rock formed 65 million years ago during the Cretaceous period is relatively soft, hardening only after prolonged contact with air. It is geologically stable, unlike limestone or sandstone, which made the irreversible top-down method viable. The Rashtrakutas controlled major trade routes connecting northern and southern India, granting them access to the finest artisans. Iron chisels and hammers, combined with generational expertise and an organized labor force, were sufficient tools, but only with flawless coordination. Kailasa is not merely large, it is the largest monolithic excavation on Earth. Petra's famous treasury is a facade carved into a cliff face, spectacular from the outside, largely hollow within. Kailasa is the inverse, a complete interior world all from one stone. How did a society without written architectural plans in the modern sense coordinate hundreds of laborers across years of continuous work with no room for error and produce a structure that still stands intact 12 centuries later? Different continents, different centuries, and yet the same impulse keeps surfacing. At Göbekli Tepe, at Stonehenge, at Allora. This is not coincidence. It is something deeper about how the human brain processes permanence and mortality. We are pattern-seeking primates who need to carve something into the physical world that will outlast us, to say as clearly as we can, I was here, this mattered. The Kailasa Temple was never really about the engineering. It was about the same impulse that pressed a hand against a cold cave wall 40,000 years ago and blew pigment around it. The tools changed, the scale expanded, the instinct did not. And the real question is not whether ancient builders were more advanced than we assume. It is whether we are still driven by the same need. And if we are, what are we carving into our own stone?